And there we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you so much for tuning into this brand new interview. I'm actually pretty surprised that this person, excuse me, has agreed to this interview. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. This is former NXT ring announcer, interviewer, has done a lot of stuff with stand-up comedy over the past few years as well, done a lot of voiceover work, radio host, podcast host, YouTube channel extraordinaire, as they say. He's done a lot in this community, and he's already laughing at my intro already. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonny Loquasto, how are you, my friend?
Mike, why would you say you're surprised I agreed to do the interview? You asked me, I said yes. What's so shocking about that?
Because I'm actually surprised you answered. I'm just kidding.
But come on, man.
But no, it's actually cool though, because like I get to have this conversation with you, get to dive deep into how you started, and just get a normal conversation about the same passions that we both have, as me as an aspiring broadcaster, and you and what you've done thus far. So I mean, I'm excited for this.
Well, you already grow a better mustache than me, so you're a step ahead right there.
I've already got some comments about this mustache, but it's staying on, people. It's staying on. But
don't give up. Don't give up.
But I want to start out this interview with the kind of a spitball, fireball question really quick, kind of something that wasn't a part of the notes. Does pineapple belong on pizza, in your opinion?
I'm completely okay with it. I've had pineapple on pizza. Look, I'll if you give me a Hawaiian slice, I will eat a Hawaiian slice. It's really as simple as that. I don't see. Pineapple's a very polarizing topic when it comes to pizza, and I'm not quite sure what it is. Like I almost feel like pineapple on pizza has become like the Nickelback of pizza toppings, and that a lot of people want to hate on Nickelback and chastise Nickelback and make fun of Nickelback. Oh, they're the worst band ever. When it comes down to it, they are far from the worst band of all time. Do I listen to their music? No. But do they have good songs that are legitimate? Yes. But at some point, it just became really popular to trash Nickelback, and everyone had their hack Nickelback jokes. As a comic, I had one at one point. After a couple months, I realized it was stupid, and I got rid of it. But at the same time, Nickelback didn't deserve all that hate. They're not bad dudes. Well, that's how I feel about pineapple. Pineapple is a fantastic fruit. It's actually good for the immune system. It's delicious. And if you want to put it on pizza, make it happen.
That's awesome. And I completely agree. I mean, I love pineapple. Like I love pineapples on my salad, on my pizza, but I think there's certain styles of pineapple on pizza that people don't like. Like for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the ham portion of the pizza. That's just a personal taste that I'm not really preferable of. But I mean, hey, people have their own, different tastes and different opinions about that, which I'm glad that you have a good stand on that.
I find that interesting. So if you're okay with pineapple on pizza, what would you combine it with if not adding the ham, making it thus a Hawaiian?
That's a good question. Oh my goodness. I would probably say to make it Hawaiian, that's interesting enough because I'm more of a mushroom on pizza kind of person. So it's, okay. It doesn't really give that Hawaiian vibe to it, but I mean, I understand that the ham on it would be kind of the Hawaiian feel to it. But personally, like I mentioned before, I'm more of a mushroom or just a regular meat lovers pizza.
So you would have pineapple and mushroom.
Yeah.
I will say that's a combo I've never had. Anytime it's been pineapple, it's always been accompanied by ham and a sweet barbecue sauce as opposed to tomato sauce. That generally is the way they combine things. But hey, pineapple and mushroom, you might be onto something there. You may have to call that the sock monkey pizza because I have never heard of pineapple and mushroom.
Hey, it's different combinations, dude. It's different combinations. So I want to get started with how you started. So originally you were a stand-up comedian, and how much, you've traveled all around the world to do stand-up comedy. You do focus on that on your YouTube channel as well, but you also did that for our troops as well. So how did it feel to, do something as stand-up comedy and to do something great as doing shows for, our troops that are deploying or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, no, it's cool you brought that up. When I started in 2005, every comic kind of has goals in a way, and some goals you achieve, some you don't, some it takes longer than what you expect. One of my goals when I started is that I want to get to the point where I'm good enough to get chosen to go overseas to entertain the troops. It's something that I've seen comedians do over the years. I didn't know how to do it, but I wanted to get there somehow. It took 9 years before I was invited for the first time. And ironically, I've been to the Middle East now 6 times total, technically 5 for wrestling, 1 for comedy, but 3 of them specifically were to entertain the troops. And so, gosh, I'm trying to remember everywhere I've been. Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, Djibouti, Qatar. I'm probably missing a few. We went to about 5 different bases on Iraq. So the first time I went was actually a part of a stand-up comedy tour. And the guy that was in charge for Armed Forces Entertainment, we really hit it off. He was an incredible guy. It turns out he was the same individual who was in charge of do you remember when WWE would go every year to Kuwait for a couple of days?
Oh, yeah.
Right. He was the guy that was in charge of that. So he loves wrestling. Him and I just started talking wrestling. And by the end of the tour, it was a 17-day tour. He said, man, I would love to have another wrestling tour. I just don't know how to do it. And I said, well, by this time I was already working in wrestling for a number of years. And I said, what if I put a tour together of people that the troops may know? Would you greenlight it? He said, yeah, well, make it happen. A couple of months later, very serendipitous. I'm on a podcast the same day as Ken Anderson was on a podcast. We both happen to have on Wounded Warrior Project bracelets.
Okay.
Him and I start talking. And, I had done some stuff for Wounded Warrior. So did he. And I said, I was talking to a guy from Armed Forces Entertainment who mentioned about, his desire to have a wrestling tour to come back overseas. And he goes, I'd love to do one of those again. And like the light bulb went off in our heads at the same time. And I was like, well, let's put a tour together. He goes, all right, I got 2 guys right away. Shane Helms will do it. And I really want to get Sergeant Chris Melendez involved. And for anyone who doesn't know, Sergeant Chris Melendez is a wounded warrior. He lost his leg in Iraq in 2006. Had to be revived 3 times, almost didn't make it. An amazing athlete. Wanted to become a professional wrestler so badly. The Dudley boys trained him for free for 2 years. Ken helped set that up. He became a professional wrestler for Impact Wrestling for a couple of years. Just one of the most incredible human beings I ever met. So Sarge was on board. And then the first tour, we added in Austin Aries and Thea Trinidad, who's now Zelina Vega. Then the next year, we had Melina and Scotty 2 Hotty. And the second time in 2016, we brought Chris, Sergeant Melendez, back to Iraq for the first time since almost losing his life. And to say that was surreal is an understatement. Like I said, we went to 5 different bases. We hopped all over Iraq. And I remember I wanted to make sure I observed Sarge in these surroundings just to see how he responded. And you could just see how much it meant to him. Because now, he's a working professional. He's a father. He's doing so amazing in his life, but to fight back from death, essentially, he had to be revived 3 times. He lost his leg. He lost a very close friend in the same IED attack. So to watch, you could literally see his heart being mended back together while we were there in Iraq. And it still means the world to me to this day. I just talked to Chris last week. Me, him, Shane, and Ken are still in a group text. We just stay in contact. Yeah. And, we were there in downtown Baghdad. And I remember talking at the end of the trip. He said, I didn't realize how much I needed this until I went through it. And just seeing him interact with the soldiers. I mean, we're all grateful to be there talking to the military, and whether it's Air Force or Navy or the Army or the Marines, we go everywhere.
Right.
And just seeing how he responds and how he interacts with them, just the immense amount of respect on both sides is just something I will never forget. And I'm so grateful, even if we never get a chance to do another one, the fact that we got to do those 2 tours under the Ringside Salute tour, which is the name that we came up with. Oh man, I hope I'm doing it justice the way I'm explaining it, because, and you have no idea how much the troops appreciate it until you're there. Because to us, we want to go and show our support, but they tell us all the time, hey, you have no idea, because we feel sometimes lost over here. We feel sometimes forgotten. You know, we're in Iraq, we're in Qatar, we're in Bahrain for so many months at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize, because of me, I'm not famous. No, I'm not well known as a comic or in sports entertainment, but they're still so truly grateful to anyone that goes over there. And man, yeah, it's even if it never happens again, those 3 times we got to hop around different areas of the Middle East. I remember the one day there was a famous recording artist who was in Qatar at the same time as us, and he was supposed to put on a big concert and hang around for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one day that he was supposed to visit 6 or 7 different bases, just like us, he said he was lightheaded and canceled everything.
Mm-hmm.
We found out at like 8:30 in the morning and said, well, I guess we're about to have a long day. We went to even more bases than we were supposed to go to. I kid you not. 8:30 a.m. until about midnight. We went nonstop.
Oh, wow.
And it was 120 degrees.
Mm.
And so needless to say, at the end of that day, we were all exhausted. We were dehydrated no matter how much water we were drinking. But we knew how much it meant. And we had a couple of the stations tell us, like, hey, we were really disappointed that so-and-so, I don't want to dime him out because it makes him look bad, but that so-and-so didn't come in today. We had people coming in on their off day. So the fact that you guys came through means the world to us. And that's a day I'll never forget. A 16-hour day in 120-degree heat, just hopping place to place, only stopping to get food. Coolest day ever. And so, yeah, man, it's a long-winded answer, but it means a lot to me to be able to have done that. And hopefully, again, I can do that. But yeah, I mean, you know, our military, it's regardless of political ideations, because I certainly have my opinion on what's happening currently in politics and the administration. Anyone who's willing to, you know, put their life on the line and their life on hold for the military, whether or not they agree with a certain administration, I give them all the credit in the world. And so really glad we got to do that.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And especially, you know, talking about our troops and, you know, just providing those shows. I mean, I know so many comics over the years have done shows like that, and they've done countless hours of going to multiple bases and going and entertaining the troops. I mean, obviously you have with WWE doing tribute of the troops, you know, every single year, starting in the mid 2000s and stuff like that. So I find it amazing how much like not even a well-known person or maybe the most famous person in the world can impact one individual's day or one individual's life. It's so amazing.
And that's something that we all have to remember. That's a great point that you just made. It doesn't matter who you are. You can impact someone's day. You could be, think about what we're going through right now. We're in a pandemic where a lot of people thought we were, you know, flattening the curve and we were past the worst part. And now look at how many states. I'm in a current state that is skyrocketing numbers right now. We have to wear a mask in public in Florida right now because people, quite frankly, didn't listen. They didn't do what they were supposed to, and numbers are going back up. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Everything going on with, you know, the George Floyd situation and police brutality. We're all trying to come together, and we're all trying to make society better. There's a lot going on right now. There's people losing jobs. There's people struggling with their families, sickness, you name it. You have no idea the kind of difference you can make just even at the grocery store and smiling at the person working there. Or like the other night, I went out to get some dinner with a friend of mine, and our server was a really crabby person. And we both went out of our way to compliment our server because, hey, if she's not going to be nice, that's okay. We're going to be overly nice. And the girl I was with complimented her hair and said, you know, your hair is beautiful. And she was sincere in saying it. And wouldn't you know it, the rest of our time, the server was in a pleasant mood. It's just like little examples like that. No matter who you are, you don't have to be famous. You don't have to work in entertainment. You don't have to be a public figure. You can change someone's day. And that's something I think people need to focus on in this era of the internet and you know, microwave society. It's like when it comes down to it, we're all human. We're all flawed. We're all infallible. Like, do your best to pick people up. Like, my phrase is pick up those who need picking up. And I try to do that as much as possible. And I think that if we all focused on that more often, I think the world would be a lot, you know, better of a place, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, and that's what I really love about your mentality and your kind of your strive is that, keeping that positivity on check and keeping it the main priority. I mean, excuse me. So it's awesome because I relate to that. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially nowadays, that focus more on negativity because it seems that each and every month of the year, especially in 2020, it's getting relatively worse and worse. But to me, I always believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel at the end of the day. Like there is somehow, some way, sure, everything seems at its lowest point, but somehow, some way, you could always find a little bit, just a little bit of positivity, whether that's through someone's smile, whether that's through someone, compliment, or even on social media where, you tweet out something saying, you know what, I absolutely love this person's art, or I love this person's stand-up show that had happened before all this had happened. Or, my point is that there's lots of positives that could be pulled out from all this.
Without question. And look, unfortunately, negativity, it brings clicks. And that's something that you can't deny. But when it comes down to it, yeah, I mean, positivity is the key. And unfortunately, we have so much negativity in society right now. Sometimes it boils over and the bad people need to be called out, whether it be what's happening with police brutality, or most recently, I'm a guy who's made a living in comedy and wrestling over the past 15 years off and on. The past week alone, you're seeing comedians getting called out. I'm not going to say specific names, but if they're proven to be bad people, guess what? They deserve to be out. Same thing in the wrestling community. You see everything happening with speaking out. I give these women all the credit in the world because it is not easy. Like I said, I'm a commentator. I'm a host, ring announcer. I'm not necessarily, quote, in the locker rooms per se on the indies. So I can only imagine what it's like. I have so many female friends, whether they be comedians, whether they be healthcare professionals, whether they be wrestlers. It's not easy, period. No matter what profession you're in, there are bad dudes and there are people that take advantage. And, I don't know if this is a second wave per se of the Me Too movement. But bottom line is I'm glad that every woman who's being brave enough to speak the truth, it needs to happen because bottom line is, I don't care how famous someone might be. If they're a bad person, they need to be called out. They need to make sure they can't hurt anybody else. And so it's been a very difficult week. When I see what happens, like I said, I love comedy. I love wrestling. They've been my life for the past 15 years. Right. And some of these people I know that I see stuff happening with, and it's very disappointing. But bottom line is, if this is how we're going to get better, then this is what needs to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, again, what you're saying is absolutely, the right thing at this moment. I mean, it's, you give credit to those who are speaking out. You give all the respect in the world for those who are taking the time to get out of their comfort zone and saying, hey, this person's a bad person. I mean, of course, there's shockers here and there where people that we trust or people that we are a fan of that, we didn't expect to be a bad person. So, again, I'm not naming names or anything, but again, I was personally shocked when I heard a lot of these people. But I mean, eventually, like I mentioned before, there's always bad eggs everywhere. There's always bad eggs, no matter what you do in life. But the best thing that we could do is that as soon as we could, equalize in, kind of singling them out, then that's what I think helps. And having that positive mentality, as mentioned before, helps go to that, that path that you want to go on, and ultimately, and I really have to say this, is that really your passion, your strive, your what you want to do in life, your love, what you want to do for the rest of your life is what ultimately, guides you to what you want, to a good path. Because of course there's, bad turns here and there. There's, oh, well, you aligned yourself with this person and then they didn't turn out to be a great person. And then now you're stuck. What do you do? Or in a case where we have, a virus, a pandemic going around, oh, well, now I'm out of a job because of this. You always have to think, well, eventually this will all settle down. You know what I mean? Is it going to happen overnight? No. It's going to happen in the next few months. Hopefully. That's our hope. Yeah. But at least we could say, you know what? For me personally, I want to become a broadcaster, a sports broadcaster. You know what I mean? I strive and, I have inspirations such as Jim Ross, Mauro Ranallo, Jonny Loquasto, and people like that, who honestly, inspire, and those inspirations help me, say, okay, I got to get my mind clear and just continue into producing more content, or producing, talking to people. And, it, of course, like I said, it's hard, but I mean, you just have to do your best to your ability.
And it's literally day by day. Like right now, it's a difficult situation for a lot of people. You just got to take it day by day. Sometimes it feels like, right now, it feels like Groundhog Day for me as well. The key is, what can I do every day to better myself, to help someone if possible? It's day by day. I've been meditating more now than I ever have before, because it's been such a weird couple of months. This is the most free time I've had in my adult life. The moment I graduated college, I've been hustling nonstop. I mean, it took me almost a decade just to get to my job this past year. Like, that was a lot of hustle. And so it's literally day by day, and just not being afraid to reach out to people that you care about. Because sometimes just even a simple conversation can help you, or can help someone, you know what I mean? So, yeah, it's interesting times we're in, but the key is, it's just being the best person. And when it comes to equality, part of equality is being able to stand up for yourself. And historically, women and people of color have been discriminated against. So part of equality is standing up for yourselves. And that's what needs to be happening right now. And I take it upon myself to be the best, not to overuse the word ally, but I take it upon myself to be the best ally possible. And that's being vocal about the right things.
So. Oh, yeah. That there's no doubt about that. Now we're going to go on to the more lighter things of this interview. But of course,
now that we solved the planet, let's go on.
Yeah, of course, that the issues that always have to be addressed. That's no doubt about that. So I'm glad that we were able to get those issues and stuff that is currently happening in today's society out of the way. But of course, they need to be addressed. Of course, we need to definitely say that, and get our opinions on it, and hopefully, again, as everything time goes, hopefully everything progresses through there. So now, here's the fun stuff, Mr. Quasto. We got this. Mm-hmm. So, of course, coming from your comedian background, early on in your career, talking about how you were going to places like Iraq, Kuwait, and places as of that, who inspired you to become a comic?
Oh, a couple people, really. Actually, it's ironic. It wasn't necessarily a stand-up comic that inspired me to do comedy. When I was a kid, In Living Color, the TV show, hit me at the right time. I was a young kid. I had started watching stand-up when I was maybe 7 or 8. I didn't quite really understand per se what it was. But then when In Living Color hit the air, I was a kid in elementary school, not to age myself, but I was around elementary school age. And I just became fascinated with the show. I mean, to this day, I will still argue with people that it's the greatest show of all time. I know the Seinfelders are going to argue with. That's fine. You can argue with me. That's the good thing about entertainment. It's all subjective. You don't have to like what one person likes. I may not like, and that's great. To me, In Living Color was so ahead of its time. And to this day, there are still jokes that I'll go back and watch and be like, oh, that's what that was. Because as a kid, you're not going to get everything. And Living Color was so next level over my head, And you think about the cast. Is there ever a cast on television that so many mega stars came from? You think about it. Jim Carrey, Damon Wayans, Marlon Wayans, Tommy Davidson, Jamie Foxx. Gosh, who else am I missing? Everyone on the show. Keenan Ivory Wayans is a mogul, a legend. God, I know I'm missing someone huge. I can't think of it. David Alan Grier, arguably my favorite cast member of all time. I mean, classically trained actor. David Alan Grier can do it all. I've had the pleasantries of working with him on 2 or 3 different weekends, actually, as a comic. Nicest guy ever. Just the show was so amazing. God, Kelly Caulfield, brilliant character actress. Kim Wayans, so funny. Alexandra Wentworth. I can go on and on. We could do the whole show about Living Color. It inspired me so much to where, and I also grew up as a fat kid. I was very big as a kid. From 4th grade until about 7th grade, I was huge. And, back then, no one was really checking bullying. If you were a fat kid, you were going to get bullied. You just dealt with it. And so for me, I developed my sense of humor really early. Like I developed a quick wit and comebacks, self-deprecation. That was all like my defense mechanism. And so you combine that with In Living Color, I just became obsessed with, wanting to entertain people and parody. And that's when, like, I also was a massive fan of Weird Al. So talk about the king of parody, boom, right there. So it was a combination of Weird Al and In Living Color. And then, I started listening to, obviously guys like Eddie Murphy, and then comedy albums is really what motivated me. But I was never a traditional comedy album person where it's just all stand up. I liked variety. So, the Adam Sandler albums, Chris Rock, Roll with the New, Dennis Leary, No Cure for Cancer, albums like that really. I was even a Jerky Boys fan. I mean, any kind of strange comedy album really stuck with me. And that's hence why when I released my album a couple years ago, it was very, very different. So yeah, it was really a kind of a combination of things. I stand-up was just something I wanted to try once I became a young adult. And it was one of those things where once I decided to do something, I'm too stubborn to stop. And that's kind of how it worked out.
That's awesome. I mean, awesome beginnings, of course, coming from the comedic perspective and all that. I mean, obviously you saw a lot of great comedians that have came up and then done completely better things after comedy as well. I mean, you look at Dolph Ziggler being one of the people as well, does comedy, but also does professional wrestling. So I think that's very cool. Speaking about professional wrestling, though, what was that transition like going from comedy to being a on-air host for professional wrestling? Like, was that a smooth transition? Was it something that, it was a love for professional wrestling as a kid, and then, that was kind of like, okay, I could definitely do this? Like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, wrestling was my first love. My first wrestling event, I was in kindergarten, and I still vividly remember leaving in the driveway that day, and I remember certain aspects of the day, and I was like, it's one of my earliest memories. So wrestling was my first love. But growing up, it's not anything that you think is really realistic. I was not a great athlete, so I was like, well, I can't be a wrestler. And I started stand up, and obviously I loved that. And then I got into on-camera hosting a couple of years later. I won a stand up competition that got me a job with what was called CBS Mobile at the time. It was when mobile content first started on cell phones. You probably do not remember this at all. But it's right when mobile content first began. And so I learned how to be a host on the job training. I learned teleprompter. Teleprompter came really easy to me. Riffing off the prompter came really easy to me. So I was hosting for a couple of years, and I was hosting this one project with, he was actually the former EP of Beverly Hills 90210 way back in the day. And the main camera guy and I started talking about wrestling. And, he saw my passion for it, my love for it. I thought nothing of it. A couple of months later, David Marquez reaches out to me. This is probably spring of 2010. And he said, hey, I'd like to meet up. I have a possible opportunity for you. I said, okay. We sit down at the Starbucks in the Valley, Sherman Oaks. And he said, I'm starting a professional wrestling television show. It's going to be weekly, episodic, original content. It's affiliated with the NWA. It's going to be called Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I need someone to do interviews. My top camera guy thinks you'd be great for it. Are you interested? I said, oh, I'm not interested. I'm in. What are we doing? And that's how it all started. I started off my first couple of years basically being the backstage interview guy. And like a lot of shows, we would do sometimes 4 episodes in a taping, sometimes 2. It kind of it all changed over the years. And I want to say it was around 2013 or 14. It was like a Thursday night, and David Marquez calls me up and he says, hey, so you're doing commentary on Sunday? And I'm like, huh? He's like, yeah, the regular team, they just can't make it. So I'm going to put you on commentary. So I'll get you what I can ahead of time. Just prepare yourself. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do. You talk about being thrown into the fire. That's what it was. And so, but luckily it went well. I mean, for the most part, I kind of took to it relatively easily. And then from 2014 to 19, I was consistently part of the commentary team, doing a mix of play-by-play and color, kind of a hybrid, working with guys like Todd Kennelly, who's incredible. And then probably about 2.5 years, Joe Galley and I, and if you know Joe Galley, he's the lead voice for the NWA right now. We had a great relationship. We were kind of like a hybrid. He would take lead, but it wouldn't be a big deal if I took us to commercial or if I closed out the show. We just had a really great relationship like that. And so, you just constantly want to get better. I'm a big person on preparation. I will show up with, I'm a note person. I've gotten better at cutting down the notes, but I'm big on preparing because if the guys and girls have to prepare for their matches, it's my job to put over their story and tell their story as much as possible. And so like my favorite thing about commentary is actually walking up to someone and saying, hey, is there anything that you want us to focus on for your match? Story-wise, character-wise, are there any new moves we should be on the lookout for? Stuff like that, because I want to make sure that I'm doing my job, So it was an interesting transition. And I feel like once I did make the move to Florida, I was more than ready for it, but I've learned so much in the past year. I feel like I'm 80% better than I was the previous 9 years sitting here today. It's just when you learn from great people, you're only going to get better. And that's kind of how it's been the past year.
That's awesome. I mean, like you mentioned before, you were also not only an on-air host, but you were also a part of commentary. So when you made that, again, another transition from Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and all the projects that you were doing at the time to when you got the call to NXT, what was it like to not only leave your comfort zone over in the California area all the way across the country to Florida, but you were also a part of not only commentary for sometimes NXT on here, ring announcer for the NXT house shows, which were mostly in the Winter Park, Florida area, where they had Largo, a couple of cities I can't name at this moment. But what was that transition
There's
like?
There's a lot of them.
What was it going?
A lot of cities in Florida.
What was that transition like?
It was a life change for sure. I mean, moving from Los Angeles all the way to Orlando, but it was something I was ready for, absolutely ready for. And I was more than excited to do it. But yeah, I mean, in the past year, it was a lot because it's funny because I actually shot a comedy special in November of 2018 and we were literally about finished. Mm-hmm. And I was going to go into the process of trying to sell it when I got the job. So that was crazy alone. To where it's like, okay, well, now I have a new direction. I'm just going to hold off on the comedy special because, when a comic puts out a special, that's like almost like their opus in a way. It's all the years. For me, it was 14 years of hard work and hustle and losing sleep and traveling, all into this hour of something I was really proud of. And it's like if you can't put your full heart into promoting it and trying to sell it, it's best to just wait. And I said, okay, the special is going to go on the shelf. At some point, it'll get out there and I'll be really proud of it. Hopefully I don't age a whole lot, so I look the same. Fingers crossed.
Right.
But yeah, so it really was a big life change because I was working at my hospital as a physical therapist the day I found out about the job. I finished seeing my patients and I went down and I told my two bosses, I said, yeah, I'm moving across the country. It looks like in about a month, and I just found out. And they were all celebrating. They were all very happy, but it was crazy. I mean, but crazy in the most surreal way possible. Because if you would have told 7-year-old me watching Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan do commentary that I would have an opportunity to sit at that desk, even 7-year-old me would have been like, "What? It's not, no, how's that going to be a thing?" And so, I couldn't be more grateful for everything the past year. I mean, like you mentioned, hosting the live events for NXT all throughout Florida. Awesome. Doing backstage interviews for NXT. So cool. Whether it was digital or on television itself. And then hosting and ring announcing live events for the SmackDown brand. I got to do Staples Center, which is the arena I had gone to for the last decade plus in LA, and 205 Live doing play-by-play. My first broadcast ever was in Philly, in the arena that I'd been going to since high school, where I went to college. I went to college not even 15 minutes from the Wells Fargo Center, and my first broadcast was in Philadelphia. That is, you can't even come up with that stuff. And it was just that's how it happened. It wasn't like that was it's just how it worked out. I had to, they booked me that day. It was in Philly. Oh my God. And so like doing play-by-play, it's just, wow. It's such an amazing, it's such an art form. And I just try to do it justice every time out, you know, and just being able to do, and then doing some digital things, whether it be something for YouTube or you know, other digital clips. My goal was I want to be a utility guy. You know, every baseball team needs a guy that plays 4 positions.
Right.
That's how I want to be. I want to be the kind of person that you can count on. If you call my name, I'm going to do a good job. And that's kind of how I want it to be. And I've been fortunate that over the past year, I was able to do all of that. And I put my heart into everything, and I'm really proud of this past year. And I had a lot of help. I mean, working with the entire announce team there, couldn't say enough great things. So talented and so positive as far as human beings, helping each other out. Like, gosh, I look forward to society getting back to normal, like we all do, because there's a lot of stuff I miss, you know, driving to the local shows in Florida, or once I was on the road doing 205 Live, just hanging out in the TV locker room with Greg Hamilton, you know, stuff like that. It's just, it's so cool. Like, and you just want to do a good job. And I feel like I'm very proud of what I was able to do, and grateful to everyone on the team that helped me. Like I said, I truly feel like I'm 80% better than I was a year plus ago at this time.
That's awesome. I mean, like we mentioned before, you had so much great experiences in NXT and also 205 Live. You know, again, with the commentary on 205 Live, or it was the ring announcing or backstage interview for NXT. There's one thing I do want to mention about NXT that I think you know where I'm going to go with this. This was your first road loop in NXT, and I believe it was in December or February. I'm not too sure, but you went to the California road loop. And that's actually how we first met over there, because you were hosting as ring announcer for that road loop. So can you talk to us about your first road loop experience outside of Florida? And can you kind of maybe give a little bit of the details of like your emotions during this? Like, was I prepared to go outside of Florida and stuff like that?
Yeah, that was also very surreal. Is the fact that I'd lived in California for the previous 14 years. And we're doing, I'm trying to remember that tour specifically. I know we did Riverside, correct? That's where I met you.
Yes. Hometown.
I know we did I know we did Riverside, and I think it was a 4-night loop, and I'm trying to recall, I honestly didn't know all the cities, but it was within like a 400-mile radius, and we hopped around. Mm-hmm. Wow, the crowds. Oh gosh, it was so cool. And also to have one of the producers that weekend was Scott Garland, and who I was in the Middle East with. So him and I were legitimately friends prior to me coming in. So just being there with him was tremendous. But as far as feeling ready, I totally felt ready. Because I mean, like I said, I'm working with people like Alicia Taylor, who has guided me along the way and made sure I was ready to go. And that's what your job is as a team member. And, you know, learning from people like Tom Phillips, like Michael Cole. I mean, Jesus, they're as good as it gets. And so the whole team is going to make sure you're ready. And so I, honest to God, it was an easy, not an easy transition, because it's always a little hectic when you're in front of bigger, but no, I mean, I absolutely felt ready, and it was so fun to be back in California. I wish my parents could have made it, but they live a little too far away. They're not really at the age they want to drive long distances. But it was really cool, like seeing people I knew. And then seeing, for example, the Staples Center show, so many people I knew that night, many of which had no idea I was going to be there until they saw me in the ring. That was funny. But yeah, it was great seeing you. It was great talking to people out there, and hell of a show, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time they come over here to Riverside, California, which, again, it's the best. You know, it's awesome. The crowds are always great, especially during the road loops. So it's awesome. I mean, there's always something with the crowd. Especially with that kind of crowd of like a smaller venue, you know, per se. And then it's just kind of like you just hear the energy in that room.
Yeah, I think it's about 1,000 people, and it was sold out. And you're right. Just the noise and the energy, and man, it just makes you think, I really hope sooner rather than later, we can all get back to that. Because right now, obviously, there's a lot of unpredictability in society. We don't know when arenas will be operating again, when live events will be operating again. And it's hard to believe that we're only a few months removed from having packed arenas and packed shows. So, man, putting it out to the universe. Let's go. Let's get this happening at some point. Let's get healthy and let's get this happening.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this has been a great interview thus far, but I do want to get into one more particular area that I did want to cover in this interview. And as mentioned before, I am an aspiring broadcaster, especially in the sports world. So, you did mention about taking notes and making sure that you learn from those that were there before you and stuff like that, whether it was from, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood all the way to, your of course, also mentioning your comedy career and also in NXT. And even now, the stuff that you're doing now with Triple Threat and everything that you're doing over there. So what would be the best advice for someone that it's aspiring to be a ring announcer, aspiring to be a commentator in the wrestling business or just sports in general?
Number one, you're already doing it. You're immersing yourself in the industry. You're immersing yourself in the culture. How long until you're going to school? Where?
I am currently going to a university. I just graduated from community college over here in the area called San Bernardino Valley College. And I'm currently going to university at Cal State San Bernardino, going for my bachelor's degree. And I'm hoping to get my graduates program after this over at a university by the name of UCLA or Cal State Fullerton. Hopefully those two are definitely options after I am done with the bachelor's program.
And the goal is to have the master's in broadcasting.
Yes, sir. Broadcasting and communications.
That's awesome, man. It's a great combination. You're already doing it. The fact that, gosh, I assume you're 21, 22?
You got it right.
Yeah. I wish I would have, at your age, I was still struggling through a physical therapy program. Knowing I loved physical therapy, but still, I just had this feeling it wasn't my destination. Like I remember receiving my diploma on stage, getting my master's degree, which was a really cool deal. Like it was a big life moment. But I remember receiving that diploma. And as I'm walking off the stage, I remember thinking, all right, cool. What's next? And it wasn't, whereas like my classmates, this was their dream. They were ready to get to work and start a family. And it's like, I don't want any of that. I'm not starting a family. I'm not buying a house. I'm not settling down. I already knew I wanted to move to California and I wanted to chase other dreams. Like, yeah, I love physical therapy. I love helping my friends out when they get hurt. I would do it for free if I could. There's nothing better than helping someone feel better when they're not, when they're injured. But what you're doing already at your age, you're immersing yourself in the culture, in the sports world, in the industry. I already know you're a sponge of information. That's the most important thing. And the key is keeping your confidence up. This industry, entertainment in general, is a roller coaster, dude. There is ups and there is downs. There's moments like you think, oh, this is it. I got it now. I got it. And then, where's the rug going? And it just gets swept out from under you. Trust me, I'm a lot older than you, and it has happened to me more times than I can count, including, recently. And because you never know what's going to happen. Who would have predicted, besides medical professionals and scientists, who would have predicted what we have right now with the pandemic? I mean, not a lot of people would have, So being able to weather the storm is the most important thing. It's not always easy. You're going to have your days where you feel top of the world. I'll never forget, I was hosting a show on Access TV in 2013. It was live television every single day. It was so much fun. I was doing really well. Feedback was strong. And then one day, the show was over. And I was like, wow, it really can get taken away quickly. But then I said, oh, well, okay, I'm doing live TV. I could just transition. Unfortunately for me at the time, I did not have the right representation that could get that done for me. And I learned a valuable lesson. Another thing that I want to tell you is in your career, you really have to do what's best for you. You're eventually going to get representation, whether it's in the hosting world, in the sports broadcasting world. Ideally, you're going to want to have an agent, or a manager. I made the mistake of staying loyal to an agency that did not have their stuff together. And I had a feeling they didn't. And this other agency wanted to sign me who was better and was really believing in me. And they already had stuff lined up for me. Well, this other agency read me the riot act when I said, you know what, for hosting, I'm going to go with this company. And they said, oh, but we're already representing you for other things. And it would be a black eye for you if you left us for hosting. And so out of loyalty, I stayed. And it was a huge mistake. So if something doesn't feel right, trust your gut, trust your heart, and don't be afraid to do what's best for you. Loyalty is great, don't get me wrong. But sometimes something ain't right.
Right.
And so don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. But other than that, you're immersing yourself in everything you do and just getting through the tough parts. It's a roller coaster. You're going to have jobs come. You're going to have jobs go. You're going to have to be malleable. You're going to have to be willing to move to God knows where, depending on it. If you were to work in sports, it's not like you're going to get out of college and ESPN's going to be like, hey, kid, come over to LA, hop in, or go to Connecticut. No. You're probably going to be working in maybe regional sports, and there ain't nothing wrong with that. It's a great, training ground. Just be willing to be open, because just remember what one job may start off as, it could turn into something even cooler, or it may not. And it's just a matter of always keeping your cool, never being overwhelmed. Entertainment in general can be such an overwhelming profession, as any profession can be. But the key is just try not to let yourself get overwhelmed, whether you have to meditate or whether you have to go to therapy or whether you have to have a good group of friends to talk to that'll tell you what you need to hear and keep you grounded. That's the key. If you truly focus on what you love doing, I believe everything works out. There were moments where I felt lost as little as 2 years ago. I felt completely lost. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm in LA. I'm doing everything right. I'm a good comic. I'm a good commentator. I'm a really good host. And yet I'm just floating around. Like, I don't know what's happening here. Like maybe it's just not in the cards for me. And I had to reshift my brain. And I said, you know what, instead of looking at it this way, I'm just going to wake up every day. I'm going to be grateful for what I do have and the opportunities that I can have. And I'm going to focus on that. And it just allows you to be more creative. It allows you to be in a better mood. And if you really love what you're doing, you just focus solely on that. And as long as you can survive financially while you're focusing on what you love, eventually only good things happen. If you do things the right way and focus on what you love, it may be the long way, but eventually it's going to be the right way. And you're going to see your peers, some of them are going to blow up before you, and no rhyme or reason. The key is don't compare yourself to anybody else, because that could be a bit of a mind mess. I've been guilty of that many times, comparing myself to other people that I've come up with. And you'll do it sometimes. The key is get yourself out of that mindset. Focus solely on what you're doing and what you can do, and you're going to be perfectly fine. That's a long answer. I apologize.
Yeah, no. You're good. You're good. I do appreciate that advice. Thank you so much for that advice. And, once again, thank you so much, Jonny, for tuning in and being a part of this interview. I think this interview in particular was more of a conversation, which I tend to do with these interviews in general, because as long as we get a good conversation and and I actually have something in common to talk about. I mean, hey, it's professional to do this, and I love doing this. So I want to thank you for that. Make sure you guys check out Jonny's stuff that he's doing currently. He has a YouTube channel that's up, and I subscribed today, which I feel horrible about just doing it right now. Make sure you subscribe. Link will be in the description below. Check out his podcast, Triple Threat, which is absolutely amazing that he's been doing. Make sure you guys check out his reels. He just posted his voiceover reels, which I tend to forget. He did a lot of stuff with Samsung as well, which I think was actually pretty cool. And anything that you want to plug or anything that you want to say before we head out?
Oh man, you just said so much. I would ask you, Sock Monkey Mike, where did that come from?
The name Sock Monkey Mike. Whoa.
Yeah. Tell the world.
honestly, and I've told the world this, and I've told some friends this as well. The name Sock Monkey Mike literally was just something that I came out of my head in 2014, and that's when I started my Instagram and my well, I mean, I've always had a YouTube for years, ever since I was little, but I've never had like a gimmick. I've never had like a name that people could remember. So I was thinking to myself at age 15, I was like, you know what, like, man, like you see all these other cool people with other cool YouTube names, cool wrestling names. Like, who could ever replace a name like Macho Man Randy Savage, or just all these legends, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, George the Animal Steel, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Gorilla Monsoon, like all these names. It's like what relates to me, but it doesn't sound too cheesy. Of course, when you look at my name, it's kind of a little bit cheesy for some people, but I mean, just something that has to fit me. And so I was bored one day. I was going through my Twitter. I'm like, let's see. There's maybe sports Mike. No. See, that's kind of vague. That's kind of like maybe Dodger fan Mike. No, that's not it either. There's probably a lot of Dodger fan Mikes out there. It's like, what could separate me from the rest? And then I'm like, well, when I was little, I always had this sock monkey with me, the sock monkey toy. And so that was, reminiscent for me and relatable to me, because it was like, you know what, it's something that I relate to. I love sock monkeys. That's kind of that's the thing that I've loved since when I was little. I actually had one. I actually had one when I had surgery on my head when I was little. Early stages of it was like a shunt that was in my head, and it was something that was with me, and then that was something that kind of came out the tongue as time went on. So Sock Monkey Mike. Do I think in the professional wrestling world that'll stick over? I certainly hope so. But it's definitely been good for me. And again, I'm not a type of person that's like all gimmick. You know what I mean? I'm just simply a wrestling fan. I'm simply a sports fan that that I just talk what I love, and that's something that I've been very blessed to do. And I look up to people like Jonny Loquasto, people like Alicia Taylor, Kathy Kelly, Jim Ross, Jerry the King Lawler, who did commentary as well. People that, of course, my main inspiration, I know I'm going along here, but I'm just rambling off. There's one person that really inspired me, and that was Vince Scully. Famous sports broadcaster, legendary 60+ year career with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who I thought at age 11, I saw one Dodger game and I was like, you know what? I think this is the coolest job ever. And ever since I was 11, fast forward 10+ years later, I mean, that's
it's funny you say that. That's actually jogs a memory for me. That's how I felt about Harry Kalas with the Phillies growing up in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Vince Scully's Vince Scully. Harry Kalas is the Vince Scully of the Phillies. I mean, Hall of Famer, unfortunately no longer with us. He actually passed away, I think, only weeks after the Phillies won the World Series, which is it was sad, but almost fitting in a way, because Harry's call for the Phillies, the world champions of baseball. Like, I grew up just idolizing his voice. And I remember, I don't know if the Dodgers did this, but the Phillies used to have the Phillies Caravan every year during the offseason, where they would have like they would go to different areas and fans could buy tickets and you get to walk up and get autographs and whatever. And I remember meeting Harry Kalas, God almighty, I must have been 12 or something like that. And I almost couldn't talk. I was so like just in awe of him, and so I got to give credit to Harry. As far as commentators go, Harry Kalas is another one. Just golden voice, knew how to tell stories, and just an absolute legend. And so I remember being 6 years. I think my parents said the first job I ever said I wanted to be was a sports commentator. I think I started telling people that when I was like 7 years old, which I didn't even know who the hell says that at 7 years old. But like I said, it took me a while, but eventually it worked out. But yeah, I mean, if obviously you knew at a young age, it's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, of course, you had a great mindset at the age of 7. When I was 7, of course, my dream job was obviously not that. It was more of the dentist route. And then when I found out how much medical school it took, I was like, you know what? At age 8 or 9, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm definitely good, because those are dedicated people on their own. And how much they put into their work as well. So, I always thought that, sports commentary was not just a job, not just a career, but an art. It was an art that, it's very, very selected, people do. I mean, you also talk about people that I've been fans of as well, whether they hate him or not. Joe Buck, Joe Davis of the Los Angeles Dodgers, Oral Hershiser, a little bit of Troy Aikman here and there, Joe Madden, definitely one of the absolute legends, championship football coach, all the way to, in the commentary booth. And same thing goes for, a lot of just countless people that I can name that's mainly towards the Southern California area, which of course I have to definitely look up more and more as time goes on. I'll even put this Steve Lyons, who was, I believe a Boston Red Sox at one point player as well. So, there's countless and countless people that I look up to. And, not only from the...
I mean, it's depending on where you grow up. I mean, it depends on what market you're in. But everyone has a commentator that they relate to. I mean, like I said, I grew up in Philadelphia. So to me, it wasn't just Harry Kalas. It's also Mark Zumoff of the Sixers, who to me has been one of the long underrated broadcasters in broadcasting. And he finally got some, I don't want to say some respect, because people in the industry know how good he is. But when he got named to do commentary for the Olympics, I was like, thank you. Because Zumoff is unbelievable. I don't even care if you're a Sixers fan. It doesn't matter who. He's had a lot of partners over the last 20 years. From Steve Mix, now he's got Ala Abdelnaby. Mark Zumoff still has the same enthusiasm as he did when he was half his age now. He is unreal. Love listening to him. And and I've actually gotten to meet him and know him a little bit. I remember after I did my first broadcast, I DM'd him on Twitter and I said, hey, you can add me to the list of people who have done play-by-play at the Wells Fargo Center. And he goes, what? And I had to explain to him. He goes, oh, man, that's awesome. Because the Sixers did not have – they were either on the road that night, obviously, or had an off night. But, yeah, he's another big inspiration. Mark Zumoff, one of the greatest play-by-play guys in sports, especially in the NBA. Love him.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me in the NBA, obviously, I think the best of all time has to go to two people in particular. One that's not necessarily a Los Angeles-based commentator, but Kevin Harlan. Absolutely one of the all-time greats.
Oh, yes.
All-time greats, not only for college basketball, but for NBA as well. And also the NBA 2K series. I mean, people forget who's the first commentator that signs on. This is Kevin Harlan, and welcome to 2K Sports. That's something that's iconic, especially for not only basketball players, but sports fans alike. Matt Vasgersian's another one who I absolutely love. And then of course my all-time favorite has to be Chick Hearn, the old golden voice. Francis Chick Hearn. Definitely did wonders with the Los Angeles Lakers, and over the years, especially from the start of Showtime Lakers, and also during the struggles and after the 2004 separation between Shaq and Kobe. There's different stages of the Lakers' career that he's always been there for, and then when he retired, and did all that. I mean, that was just absolutely legendary in my opinion. So. It's just people like that make me love what I want to do. You know what I mean? So,
and currently, I got to mention Gus Johnson. My God,
of course.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good ones out there, and there's a lot of people to be inspired by, which is pretty cool.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. I really appreciate you being on here. Like I mentioned before, make sure you guys follow him on all social medias. Link will be down in the description. I think, once again, I'm probably going to say this twice, but I'll maybe edit this out depending on how it goes. Make sure to check him out on everything. We had a great conversation once again for, talking about our favorite sports commentators, talking about positivity, wrestling careers, and just the art of professional wrestling and the passion that we both have for it. So I really do appreciate you being on here. Hopefully we get to talk more in the future. And until we meet again, this is going to be the worst outro ever. Until we meet again, we will see you guys again soon. Boom.